So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our amazing host, Vanessa, who will introduce our guest and get the conversation going.
Thank you so much, Kristen. I'm really, really excited to welcome Darcia Narvaez, Professor Emerita of Psychology at the University of Notre Dame and Fellow of the American Psychological Association, American Educational Research Association, Association for Psychological Science, and the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Born in Minnesota, she grew up living around the world as a bilingual, bicultural, Puerto Rican, German American, but calls Earth her home. Her earlier careers include professional musician, business owner, classroom music teacher, classroom Spanish teacher, and seminary, among others. She uses an interdisciplinary approach to studying evolved morality, child development, and human flourishing. Her most recent books include Restoring the Kinship Worldview, which is amazing, and The Evolved Nest, Nature's Way of Raising Children and Creating Connected Communities, which we'll be focusing on today. Her book, Neurobiology and the Development of Human Morality, Evolution, Culture, and Wisdom, won the 2015 William James Book Award from the American Psychological Association and the 2017 Expanded Reason Award. Her recent short films are Breaking the Cycle, The Evolved Nest, and Reimagining Humanity. She hosts the webpage evolvednest.org and serves as president of kindredworld.org. Wow, that is a lot. Amazing. Welcome, Darcia. I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. With all these animal lovers, yay.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I loved about the Evolved Nest so much. I have tons and tons of underlines, and dog ears is just the way you really see other animals as kin. And to get started, I would love for you to share anything else about yourself that I didn't mention, and also to read an excerpt of your book for those who are unfamiliar with your work.
Sure. Well, my earliest memories of injustice towards children, and I spent a lot of time outside the States and then would come back every year after a year away and 2 years in the States and could not understand what was wrong with the world. So unjust and so, disparate in its, blessings for different people. And it took me a while to figure out how to answer the question of what's wrong with the world. But finally, I found the field of moral development. And I thought, aha, that's going to tell me how people develop morally and how they got so skewed. Well, that then led me to neuroscience and anthropology and clinical science, developmental, all sorts of sciences. And so the evolved nest idea is a transdisciplinary insight, integrating the sciences, integrating ancestral wisdom, which includes animal nation wisdom, right? And we are so far away from honoring and respecting animal nations, plant nations, even humans, right? Water, the spirit of water, and so on. So my mission in life is to try to help people wake up to the beauty of our earth and to learn again to be relationally conscious and develop relational know-how for living well with our kin of all kinds, rocks, minerals, water, animals, plants. So it's not just about people that have gone wrong, but we have been we're the cause of all this, but not all people, right? It's just a tiny slice that decided to divorce themselves from connection, and then they've spread disconnection all over the planet. So that's what we're trying to reverse to, hospice a shift into loving, caring communities all over the planet, of course.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So would you read an excerpt of
Yes.
your introduction from the Evolved Nest?
Okay. See what I can find here. So it is about the evolved nest. So evolved nests are developmental systems tailored to nurture psychological, social, and physical needs in a species-unique manner. Nests don't always look like the cupped constructions of twigs and branches that many birds make. For example, the African elephant evolved nest is a social and ecological environment centered around the natal family, mothers, aunts, cousins, sisters, and brothers who form a nucleus of care. The same goes for sperm whales. Their evolved nests are shaped by the folds of ocean currents and a matrilineal family that nurtures young whales' minds and bodies in the ways of their watery home. So every species nest has been perfected through evolution to optimize health and well-being, starting from conception through adulthood. Each is a tried and true system, validated over millions of years. The more an animal and their young mesh with the natural surroundings, the better chance they have to thrive. The same goes for humans. We and our children do best in conditions like those in which we evolved as a species. I could keep going, but maybe that's enough. I don't know.
That's great. Yeah. And is there anything else you'd like to add about the evolved nest, how you came up with this term and why this is so important?
Yeah, so I should spell out what the evolved nest is. It's coming from a list of characteristics that anthropologists found all over the world that were common in hunter-gatherer civilization. We spent 99% of our genus history in this kind of civilization, millions of years, and other animals continue to be in such environments. So, apes and bonobos are cousins. So we've been part of that line for at least 7 million years, but we split off. And our evolved nest, specifically, we've changed the order now of this because we just tested our nesting ambassador program that we're going to launch for the public in January. And we found that we needed to start with, so there's 9 components, start with nature. We are nature.
Yes.
We are. Yes. So don't be divorced from it and think you're separate. And then what does that mean? How do you honor nature? That means your own body, your own, relationships with everything, with the spider, with your glass of water. I mean, everything is relating to you and blessing you. I mean, nature loves you. You're here, right? So nature's number 1. Number 2, we realized people, when they hear about the evolved nest, they start to feel bad, either because they didn't receive it as a child growing up, or they, as parents, didn't follow it because the culture doesn't support it and told you it's fine not to. So the second one is healing. We all need transformative healing regularly, routinely. And what does that mean? That means physiologically, socially, spiritually, all sorts of ways to get ourselves back in balance so that we can unfold our unique promise, our unique gifts, our mission on Earth. And so healing is number 2. Number 3, how do you heal? When you're an adult, what works best? Play. Self-directed social play, being silly with others. And I used to, when I was teaching undergraduates, college students, we would play folk song games because that's a structured way to, get people to touch and sing and laugh and look at each other. And, it's spontaneous, but it's also, kind of structured. And then we would teach kindergartners, and it was so much fun. And that's a way to break the, rigid colonizing minds that we've been forced into and grow our spontaneity, our empathy, our connectedness. So that's number 3, play. Number 4 is responsive relationships. We all need to feel like people listen to us, like we have supportive systems, supportive relationships. And they look different for different ages. Then there's number 6. Is it number 6? Number 5, touch, positive touch. We all need that. It grows our vagus nerve. It grows all sorts of good things in our body, and no negative touch, because that shifts the trajectory away from your full potential. And then there's climate, welcoming social climate. We want to feel like we belong, we matter, that we have multiple supports throughout, our lives. And then there's multiple nurturers, because the evolved nest is not just for mom to provide or mom and dad. No, it's a community, it's a village that raises us. And the last two then are focused on what babies need, and mothers, soothing perinatal experience. So the mother feels when she's pregnant that the baby's welcome and she's supported. And so she stays calm. So the biochemistry is growing a very, pleasant personality and healthy neurobiology and so on. And the last one is breastfeeding. Breastfeeding for several years is our species' normal way to raise the young, because it's amazing. Breast milk is just incredible. And it builds the immune system, which takes at least 4 or 5 years to develop. And so you need breast milk for a long time. And of course, all our society, the modern culture, moves against all of these components. They want us disconnected so that they can control us, so we work, because the system wants you to keep working and feel bad when you're not working because the system will fall apart, rather than focused on well-being. The nest is about promoting wellness and well-being.
That is so beautiful and so comprehensive.
Yeah.
I have so many questions around that in and of itself, but I want to shift to the way you center other species, our animal relatives in this book, which I really appreciate. And I'd love for you to speak to that. How did you choose a particular species to focus on? And, are there particular species whose mode of nurturing you found really surprising that you learned a lot from? So anything you'd like to speak to in relationship to, how you centered these different species as teachers in the Evolved Nest?
Well, my beautiful co-author, Gay Bradshaw, is an eco therapist, philosopher, activist. She has a sanctuary, the Carullos Institute has one for animals that have been neglected or harmed. And so she and I went back and forth on which animals. And I had to have my favorite, my spirit, a couple of my spirit animals, bears and wolves. They're really just move me. And then she had some of her favorites. And we had to have elephants, of course, too, and African elephants. And then we, thought about the nest component, and then we thought, which animal will show us what that component looks like in a way that might be surprising to people. So we have beavers for play. Everyone thinks beavers working all the time. No. And then we have for sharing care, emperor penguins, because the father holds the egg while the mom goes to feed after she's birthed the egg. She has to go for months away, and he's keeping it warm, and all the dads are huddling around, and they're shifting once they get cold on the outside of this big group conglomeration. Then the cold people go in the middle, and they keep moving, keeping the egg warm. And then the hatching, and then the sharing, the mothers come back, and then the dad goes. And so it's just amazing shared care, right? Which is our heritage too. Humans evolved a village of care. And then we have sperm whales. Sperm whales for breastfeeding. It's just amazing, right? I didn't know this. What I learned from writing this with Gay. And sperm whales even have a song, a special song the mother develops for that baby.
Oh, that
For
is so
sperm.
beautiful. Wow.
And we do too. I mean, that's our heritage. And Mbuti, that Colin Turnbull, the anthropologist, talked about. The mother goes in the forest and sings a special song for that baby. And then when the baby is born, the community sings the special song to that baby. So it's that's just part of welcoming, nurturing, right?
Beautiful. Yeah, I was really moved by your chapter about wolves. I also have a special place in my heart for wolves. And I just love how, you write that wolf families really help to build a moral compass for their offspring. And would you read an excerpt of that chapter?
Sure.
A couple of really beautiful places.
Yes. So this is page 142. A baby's sense of self begins before birth in relationship, in their mother's womb, with or without an eggshell. An individual's self system is part of the continuity of being, gradually refined by the responsiveness of the baby's carers. Self is only known in relation to others. For 25% of their natural lifespan, young wolves are dependent on adults. Self-development involves processes embedded in the presence and context of many. This reflects, as Gordon Haber notes, one of the hallmarks of an advanced society, prolonged dependency, or neoteny, of the young enables the society to transfer large stores of accumulated past learning to each new generation. Wolf mothers and carers create a relational field of holistic support through touch and caresses, a womb of spirit through embodied love. Within this sensed knowing of safety and belonging, children build the confidence and resources to show themselves to the world and grow with assurance that their basic needs will be met.
Beautiful.
As beaver cultures beautifully demonstrate, play is a practice ground for learning body knowledge, ethics, and interpersonal skill sets. At the same time, play lays down neural networks of joy, culture, and love. As young wolves mature, older wolves, often yearling siblings, accompany them on puppy walks to rendezvous sites in the complex where exploration can be undertaken in safety. In August and September, the final days of the 5-month homestay, young wolves experience a threshold event affecting self-development. They leave the natal compound with their families and step into the open world.
Thank you. I just love that chapter so much. So I'm just curious, based on the theme and what you explore in that chapter, how can wolf families really kind of help us understand the moral development of human children?
Well, we are kin, and we too need this close companionship that the wolves demonstrate, that they even sacrifice for one another and watch out for one another. In our species our babies are born 18 months early compared to other animals. We resemble fetuses till around 18 months presumably because the birth canal shrank when we shifted to walking on 2 legs. But as a result, our babies need even more nurturing than the other animals because we're like fetuses. Other animals, they can walk around after a few hours, after birth, but not our children. And our children are growing their brains so quickly that they need that moral commitment of the parents, but that comes from the commitment of the community. So it's the community that's responsible for ensuring that the children are well nurtured and nourished. But it's, because that's the parents will give attention when the community is supportive, the parents then can be supportive. And right now in the States, of course, we're doing everything the opposite.
Yeah, thank you. So your other spirit animal, bears, it's really fascinating, the brown bear's decision-making around whether or not to have children. And I'd love to hear what you feel humans can learn from this in terms of ecological wisdom and also maybe, in relation to social pressures about whether or not to have children?
Yeah, this is a tough one because of all the religious belief systems that kind of cover over our instincts. And so in our hunter-gatherer civilization cousins, traditionally, if the community was unable to take care of a child for the long term, they would commit infanticide at the beginning, right? So, or the women they knew contraceptive information. And they, of course, were more fit than we are. Our hunter-gatherers traditionally live on protein primarily, whereas we shifted when we settled down to agriculture, eat mostly carbs. And carbs makes you fat, which makes you more fertile, and you end up having more children as a result of that. And then you're less nurturing of children. So the evolved nest started to deteriorate when we settled down in agriculture, less and less for each child. And then, because mothers also had to work in the fields, so they were not able to breastfeed for 4 years, which is the average age of weaning in hunter-gatherer communities. So, yeah, we kind of got off kilter. And what's interesting about the bear chapter, we talk about how she's taking in all the information about anticipating how much food there's going to be if she does get pregnant. Is there enough food to support the pregnancy? Right. And so if there isn't, then she's not going to get pregnant. And our ancestors did the kind of thing too, right? And now, because we kind of messed up all the biology and all the instincts and everything, and we're all kind of fat in comparison to our ancestors. The other thing that we should know is puberty for women and for guys, but especially important for females, used to be about 17 years. And then you're kind of infertile for a while, even though you have your period. But it shifted down with all the pollution and the Industrial Revolution and all. It's down to what, 12 years? And so the normal thing in adolescence is to be exploring sexuality, and no big deal because it's matrilineal society and the hunter-gatherers. Who cares who the father is? Because everyone's raising the children together. But once patriarchy comes in, from the inequality that develops from the storage of grains with settled agriculture, then the fathers want to know who their kids are because they're going to pass on their inheritance, right? So that's true for pastoral groups too, with animals and herds. So then you got to control sexuality. But now we have the case where if you're sexually explorative in adolescence today, you could get pregnant because puberty's so early. So many things got twisted and turned around in the way we've been living for the last 1,000 years or so, and just worse in the last 100 years, a few decades. But yeah, so it's really hard now for a woman, to decide whether she wants to get pregnant or not, because it's much easier to get pregnant. And then if you live in a place where there's no contraception and you don't know which herbs work because they burned all the witches who knew that, in Europe. And so there's a whole bunch of twisted and tangled mess that we've created. And to untangle it is going to take a little time. That's where we have the Nesting Ambassador program that we're going to launch.
Oh, fascinating. Well, if we have time, I'd love to hear more about that too. That sounds really, really interesting. Well, yeah, I mean, as you touched on, there's just so much disconnection from our bodies and shame, and so much built into all of this decision making. And there's also so much isolation compared to our communal tribal societies that we all evolved in. And so I'd love for you to speak to this. Many of the species that you highlight raise their young in communal multi-species communities. And we are all in multi-species communities all the time, whether we recognize it or not. And so how might restoring this sort of evolved nest, and how might we begin to, for ourselves in a way, help us address the isolation and fragmentation that is common in so many modern societies.
Yeah, I think it starts with each one of us right now. Pay attention.
Mm.
You see all the living things around you. I mean, even the things that humans have created, these are, the illusion of solidness, right? There's a lot of electrons and quarks and everything moving around. But notice, that rocks and water and the house plants, I mean, your home built from wood or whatever it is, it's all Mother Earth. Mother Earth is loving you. So be great, be grateful, be gracious, honor the animals that you meet, the ant, the spider, they need encouragement too. Mother Earth needs encouragement. We've been so discouraging her and doing things mindlessly, unconsciously. So we have to get back to our sense of always being in relation, no matter what we're doing. We're on like a spider on a web, and everything we do is reverberating out to the world because we are bodies of energy. So it's really important to attend to your own body of energy and make sure you're in a calm state. That because that'll make you more open. Because if you're anxious or worried or resentful, whatever it is, and obsessing about something, that actually shifts your ability to perceive things. You can't see as well, as broadly, and you're not going to notice the options for helping or connecting because you're all about self-protection. So that's my morality stuff coming in. When we undercare for the young, we create very stress-reactive brains that easily triggered. When that happens, the blood flow shifts away from your higher order thinking to muscles to help you either run away or fight. But it narrows your perception. What can I do to feel safe is what you're focused on. It's not about, oh, look, there's a person in need over here. My child, is feeling upset. No, you're thinking, oh, trigger. And then, so you have to learn how to notice when you're getting upset, learn to calm yourself down, belly breathing, all sorts of things can do that. And then practice social joy, because a lot of us spend so much time alone in front of the screens that we forgot how to get along. So we got to practice that too and expand our imagination to realize that we are nature, and we have an impact right now on the well-being of all the creatures around us.
It's so true. And I'm just curious, something that you said made me wonder, so many listening, I'm sure, didn't have ideal childhoods and, unfortunately weren't raised within this nurturing, evolved nest. And so I'm wonder, how you feel about, I often hear people talk about how nature kind of can be a foster mother for those
Yes.
who didn't have healthy parenting. And so I'd love for you to speak to that a little bit about how we might go about, turning to nature as mother.
Yeah, David Abram talks so beautifully about this. He didn't get along with people, but he went out into nature, and nature was, so nurturing. And we all can, learn what John Young talks about. Find a sit spot where you go to regularly. Open your senses. Pay attention to the animals and plants around you, and the animals will start to appear once they get used to you, right? And you can learn about your own habitat. Which are the plants that are native here? Which animals are nurtured by those plants? And how can you then encourage them? How do you help your waterway nearby? Ban phosphorus, the sale of phosphorus, which grows all those weeds in the river. All the things that we can do as a partner to nature, right? So we want to be immersed in nature, get a sit spot, pay attention, feel connected, let your heart open, and be, present, be reverent, and then take action that's going to help your area. And then, of course, connect with others. So it's a global effect.
Beautiful. Yeah. So, and obviously the more we care for Earth, the more capacity Mother Earth has to care for us. So it's a two, yeah, it just keeps flowing. And yeah, and there's this unconditional love that so many of us feel in nature, sitting against a tree, hugging a tree,
Yeah.
soil, whatever it is. So I'm just curious about, if we didn't have an ideal childhood, if we weren't brought up in the evolved nest, I know you went through all of those aspects, what if somebody reads your book and feels like, oof, I wish I didn't have that. What do I do now? What do you
Yeah.
suggest?
At evolveness.org, we have various tools. So we have 28 days of self-calming, just little nudges, things you can try each day. We have 28 days of nature connection, eco-attachment.dance, and 28 days of solo play. A lot of adults don't know how to play or don't feel like they can. It's okay. Start doing it yourself then. And we have 28 days of social play coming up. But we have the films to help you. Breaking the Cycle kind of gives you the big picture, 6 minutes. And then we have an Evolve Nest film, 8 minutes, to show you different animal nests and how they're like ours, and and then 12 minutes for reimagining humanity. So that's a changing, trying to awaken people to what they know instinctively deep down, what should be happening, which is nurture all over. Everyone's a nurturer, everyone is nurtured. So yeah, there's various other checklists for Evolve Nest components for young children, middle-aged children, and for adults, and things you can do every day. Did you get enough touch today? If not, well, go hug your friend or your family member. Did you get enough play? Oh, go out and run around or put some music on and dance. So trying to get people back to realizing all the nurturing they need.
That is really beautiful and so super important. I just love the actions that you offer, to just kind of tap back into that childhood self and connection to nature and our bodies. One of the things in the wolf chapter that I really appreciated is how you also speak to the trauma that other animals experience. How, for example, the Yellowstone wolves aren't able to really participate in their evolved nests in the way that they naturally would otherwise. And so, we've obviously made child raising difficult for other species as well. And I'm wondering if you'd like to speak to that for a moment, since this is Project Coyote, we're all really concerned about, the lives of carnivores and how, the trauma impacts the way that they raise their children.
Yeah, it's just awful. Yeah, my Gay is the animal specialist, so but we have the example of elephants, and they've African elephant young males were being very destructive and even raping rhinoceros in Africa. And they tried to figure out what to do, and they realized what happened was that their mothers were taken away from them too soon. And then their developmental trajectory didn't go as planned that way. But also what happens in adolescent elephant males is they join a male group, and the older males socialize them to be, controlled or whatever, to get along properly, and they miss that. So what they did with these young elephants is they put them with the older males, and then they calm down. So there's things we can do. I mean, we have the same issues going on with our young, where they're not getting the nurturing they need. They're not getting the vision quest, the initiation into adulthood that normally we would have for our, especially boys. And so then they look for something, some purpose, some, way to be a hero, and then they can go down rabbit holes. So.
Yeah, definitely it's heartbreaking. And also one of the things one of the films, I think it was The Evolvedness, I really appreciate how you show that we're not necessarily different from other species, that we're very much the same, and that's something I really appreciate about the way you approached the Evolved Nest and also the films, which I definitely recommend that everyone here watch if they're interested. So I'd love to ask you maybe one or two more questions and open up to audience questions. Your book, obviously, I mean, people could tell if they haven't read it, it's just such an amazing resource. As I mentioned to you before we started, it made me think a lot about my childhood and upbringing and also just my relationship to the ecosystem around me as part of the ecosystem. And it's such a great resource for people to think about, reflect upon their own upbringing, a great resource for parents, a great resource for animal advocates and nature advocates. And how do you see these people that you're speaking to in this book potentially collaborating? I don't know if this speaks to your ambassador program, or if there different sort of takeaways that you're hoping that people really embody after reading this book.
Yeah, we hope that people are inspired to actually apply the Evolved Nest principles, practices in their own lives. And our Nesting Ambassador program is set up to help anybody in the world, and we have people interested worldwide in learning about the practices and principles, and then developing a tool that they can use in their particular walk of life. So as a therapist, as an educator, as a early childhood person, as a community activist, whatever it is. So we're trying to mobilize the world to help everyone get nested. So the ambassadors are going to help others wherever they are get nested too. And that's what our nonprofit is trying to help. We have a new website coming in a couple months probably called Nested World. And we'll have things very easily more accessible than our current setups. So yeah, and the Nesting Ambassador program then is going to be open to the public. Yeah.
That's really exciting.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'll definitely look into that. Well, thank you so much. I have a couple more questions, but I'll open it up to audience questions now. And then if we have a little bit more time, I'll ask you a few follow-ups.
Okay.
That's my cue. Thank you both so much for this really beautiful conversation. We just have a couple questions coming in, and there's two that are actually very similar, Darcia, and they basically center on, considering our current societal state, how there's so much destruction, there's so much negativity, there's so much anti-nature. First of all, how do you find hope and where do you find hope? And what might you suggest for people looking to navigate all of these, negative elements, and how do we manage or process that? And, you've already given some suggestions, but do you have additional thoughts on how we can, move back towards nature and find inspiration even when things feel bleak?
Well, I am inspired by the oak trees around in our area. Oak is one of my mentors too. And I seek to listen. I mean, the plants, the animals have a lot to teach us, and we have to learn again to listen because they are holding the suffering of the planet in them, and they're aware of it, and they can guide us back. I think we all have to be humble to our own needs, humble to the needs of young children in particular, because we are not. We think we know better than baby what baby needs and minimize their needs and sleep train them and spank them and misdirect their development, but they have an inner compass that you have to honor. They're ready to move towards being a very helpful community member, to being virtuous. But when you shift their attention to survival because they're alone and you left them alone, but they shouldn't be alone, things really go wrong. I mean, we have a whole society of people who are undernurtured, and it's really hard to find the space to get back to connectedness. So whatever glimmer each person has, what captures your heart? which animal, which plant. Go and immerse yourself and listen to that spirit guide, because we're all spirits, we're all energy, right? Don't be afraid to move outside the colonizing mindset. The colonizing mindset says, oh, it's not logical. If you don't have an experiment to show that this is better than that, then you can't believe it, or, if it's not linear progress, we're making progress. How can you say we're not? You got to get away from that mindset, which is all left brain. Left brain is wired to itself and thinks it knows everything. It knows nothing. Ian McGilchrist, Master and His Emissary, great book. The right hemisphere governs us, but it needs to be developed well in early life. It grows more rapidly. And when you undercare for a baby, you're undermining that development. That's why play is so important in adulthood, because then it grows. It actually grows from play. Being face to face with others, doing art projects, singing, dancing, painting. Just be silly. That'll help you get back in your body, respecting your body. Whatever it is, it's beautiful. You are loved. Your cells love you. All those microbiomes you have in your body, they love you. They're keeping you alive. So cherish them. Be humble to those needs. Sorry, my cold is making my throat a little tired.
Thank you so much. Well, I guess sort of building off of that, we have another question focused on parenting. So someone asked, what do you recommend for those preparing to be parents? Are there some tools in particular that you recommend to create a welcoming nest?
Well, read the book.
Yeah.
Will help. I know people who are giving it to people who are pregnant. So it's a way to orient yourself to the child. In general, parents really just have to want less for a while the baby is very young, the child is young. You've got to be there. But you can't do it alone either, right? You need your community. So we have people in our testing and nesting ambassador program. We tested over the summer. We have couples who are looking for others who want to build a village, right? To be a community together. So you're sharing child raising. You're sharing, just all the things of life. So that's what we need. Ideally, everybody can find that. You unfortunately have to build it yourself now. But once we get going on that, I think there'll be more opportunities for young families. So they'll find those niches wherever they are in the world.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, obviously anyone who wants to dive more into this, then your book would be a beautiful place to start for that. We had some, okay, here we have a question. Donna Haraway has spent her career discussing the disconnection in science and society between humans and animals or nature. Do you find your work influenced by post-humanism? And if so, by whom? Or if not, does your work connect more with counter-humanism or something else entirely?
Well, I don't know all the labels, but I do cite. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't work with the labels, but Haraway is really important. Wonderful work. So she tells us we need to grieve together with all the kin that we have put in such dire straits. And that is so, so true. There are other people I cite, Hospicing Modernity, Vanessa de Oliveira. She's got her new book out, Outgrowing Modernity. I think she's got a lot of good points there that we have to abandon our egos and just find the flow of what we're transforming things to and be humble to the complexity of it all. So I think we, again, with our animal and plant kin, the animal nations, the plant nations, we have to be with them and work together with them, and they can guide us, really. Mosses have been around for 400 million years. We've only been here a few million, right? So.
Yeah. I have a couple of questions coming up in the chat, actually. Here's a big one. If there is one single action an individual can take to help heal the animal world, what would it be?
Well, that's a great discussion question.
Yeah.
One action. I always think it starts with you here and now, to honor the animals and plants around you. So don't swat the fly. Don't smash the ant. Find another way to collaborate. I always remember David Abrams' um, experience where he was visiting an Asian country, I forget where, maybe Nepal. And every night the monastery would put out a bowl of rice for the gods. And in the morning it would be empty, the bowl. And he wondered, how is this possible? What is people coming and eating it? So he stayed up to watch. And what happened was ants came. And one by one, they took rice kernels off to their nest. Right? And in the morning, it was empty. They are the gods. So we have to honor our kin as spirits, as guides, as gods, really. That's controversial, I suppose.
I love that, though. I mean, just that connection between across scales and beings, and yeah, recognizing what's sacred, right?
Yeah.
So how would you recommend, this is building off a question that's specifically around wolves in Colorado and all of the tensions there, but more broadly, other than things we can do within ourselves to build connection, how do we then extend that to others who might not feel the same? When we're looking, for example, at wildlife conservation and conflicts with ranchers or hunters or, people who have very different views of nature and wildlife. How do we bridge that?
That's a question for the experts. Oh, that's a tough one. Because people have their own ideals they're following. Humans are superior and we're supposed to control everything, and they come with that idea, and then they have, their ranch of their animals, and the wolves are taking them, and but it's my property, right? And so you got these conflicting moral systems or moral beliefs. So I think the Native Americans probably have much more advice here, because they've had to deal with these strange people who showed up with very half brains, really, only thinking about getting stuff and taking it, extracting, right? And controlling, left brain. So, how do we start there? I think the, one-to-one connection. But that's hard for some people because when you're when you're raised unnested, without healing from play and relationships, you're going to grab onto a script and you want to hang on to that script, or else you feel like you're going to perish. You're going to go into the abyss. And so you have to realize that people are hanging on now. They're picking this thing. We have a lot of extreme polarization in the USA as a result, because they feel empty inside. They're not connected to their heart or their spirit, and they think their gut, the fearful gut, is their heart. So trying to connect, right? Get them connected to. There's a program called the Roots of Empathy in Canada, where they bring a baby into a classroom, a newborn, and then for 9 months they follow that over the school year, follow the development of that child, and they learn about what that means, and they hold the baby, and they make things for the baby, so it's all relational. That's the kind of thing we need for adults to have. I actually think every boardroom should have a baby in it, because babies increase empathy and they decrease testosterone, right? So everybody should be passing a baby around and, paying attention. Well, how's this decision going to affect this baby, or babies like her? So there's some way to break through people's caged hearts that you got to find. Now it's going to vary by person, situation, etc. But there are ways to do it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's probably no easy answer and no shortcuts with that one-on-one communication, trust building, connection is for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Shifting gears a little bit, but we have a question about what is the role of peer-reviewed science in your approach, and how do you feel about science more broadly, especially compared to, say, Indigenous knowledge or other ways of knowing?
Well, I appreciate native science because it's broad. There's nothing that you leave out of the information that you're integrating. Whereas in Western science, oh, that's error because it's outside of what we're trying to control, So there are weaknesses in Western science. There's strengths, of course, gives us all the kind of pathway to all these technologies that we have. But it's short-sighted, and I've written about this, that it doesn't seem to, in terms of human development, doesn't have any baselines for what's species normal. Species normal is, vulnerable baby needs 24/7 attention and calmness and all that. But no, we have to do an experiment. Is formula better than breast milk? Oh, look, there's no difference. So there's all sorts of studies like that, or sleep training doesn't matter. Anybody can do it because they're looking at the wrong variables. They have the wrong method set up. They're misinterpreting it because they have no baselines. Well, who knows what's normal for human beings? I don't know. So drives me crazy, as you can see. But there are good things and well done studies for some things. But they're treating human development like it's a new drug or something. Yeah, you got to do, randomized control experiments for that, maybe. But of course, that's not holistic, right? So you're just treating the one thing again. So it's misleading us, misleading our attention. I prefer Chinese science, Chinese medicine, acupuncture and the herbs and the homeopathy. They're more broad. They're all unique for each person because everyone's in a different place. So you can't do those controlled experiments because everyone's different. And that's why oh, well, if it can't do the experiment, the left brain goes, oh, it can't be true then. So you got all that going on.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's challenging, right? Because science, like you said, has a number of strengths, but often we forget that it comes with its own biases because the questions we ask, the approach we take to developing experiments and all these things impacts what the outcome is. So I have a science training and I see that there's limitations, and it's about bringing these different knowledges together, really, and
Right.
recognizing individuals are different. So appreciate that perspective.
That's why you need multiple sciences. It's a transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary insights. You can't just take this one experiment and decide that tells us everything. No, well, how does that fit now with evolutionary systems? How does that fit with anthropological findings, et cetera? So you got to do your work that way, but science tends to be in the silo and doesn't do that.
Yeah, exactly. That interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary science is key.
Yeah.
This is perfect, actually. We only have 2 minutes left, and I have one really lovely question from someone that I think will be a nice way to end our time here. So it says, "You are so gentle, kind, and have a lot of peaceful spirits. You're an inspiration to all of us. The more we embrace nature, the happier we are. What is your happy place?"
Mm. Well, I think it's being with the oak trees and sitting, leaning against the trunk of the oak trees, watching them, talking to them. You know, it would be nice to be in a wilder place, you know, to have animals to talk to. We do have deer that come through and squirrels and birds and things, but yeah, I think it's the trees and then being on earth. So earthing, all right, because that lowers your cortisol and all that stuff. And so just being able to have that privilege of living with trees. A lot of people don't have that privilege, right? And so they're always reminding me, calm down now. And, you know, just be patient and listen, listen.
I love that. Thank you. I actually grew up in a town called Thousand Oaks, and
Ooh,
I'm very grateful for being surrounded by coastal live oaks in California, and a number of species. They're just incredible. Definitely
wonderful. Yeah.
feel their energy, their calming energy.
Yep. Yep. Douglas fir and the sequoia. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so special. So we're at the end of our webinar, but I want to give you a chance, Darcia, if there's anything that came to mind that you didn't have a chance to share, feel free. And also Vanessa, if there's anything else you wanted to say to wrap up as well.
Well, I think we have to, in the Western world, we've been so colonized that we have a hard time with it. Remember that we are spirit beings, that we are energy systems, and to honor then the wisdom of Indigenous peoples who can sense that. They have receptive intelligence to all this stuff going on. You know, the spiritual world is another world with its laws, and what we see is a material world, and we think that's all there is because half our brain isn't there or didn't get developed to have that receptive intelligence. So let's move ourselves that way. It means you foster your intuitions. You have intuitions, just, you know, let those little nudges that come. It's a wisdom that we inherit, and learn to foster that and start to then be much more connected to all the flows of things, and be aware that your spirit can be taken over by the negative, you know, spirits that are gonna make you mad and yeah, you gotta have your way and all this stuff. Beware what environments you put yourself into are shaping your intuitions. So watch what you pick to do, right? So
Appreciate that. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Yeah, that was incredible. I mean, I could ask you many more questions, but I know our time is up. So just really grateful. So much food for thought, and I highly recommend your books. So anyone who enjoyed this conversation, definitely go out and pick up The Evolved Nest. And I really also love Restoring the Kinship Worldview, which talks a lot about traditional ecological knowledge and Indigenous wisdom. So a really beautiful book to read as well that explores a lot of what we touched on. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Darcia. And we will follow up with an email and a link to the recording of this webinar that you can share with everyone in your community. And we'll have links to upcoming webinars as well. So thank you again for joining. We
Thank
have
you.
lots of lovely notes in the chat saying thank you. Lots of gratitude. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
You too. Bye.